The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. The BS Report. The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report, taping this on a Thursday. Apparently there's a professional sport called baseball. We haven't covered it that much on the BS Report this year, and the reason is I haven't really watched a lot of baseball because I was stuck in NBA playoffs. I was mired in it. But I've been slowly pulling myself back in. Turns out the Red Sox are pretty good this year. On the phone line right now, Grantland's Jonah Keri. What's happening?
Who has actually watched a lot of baseball this year, so that's good.
Yeah, you've eaten it up. And I've been following baseball basically through your column and through phone calls with my dad and the highlights and stuff like that. But it's just on the road. You got to make your choices. But we might as well start with the Red Sox. You're both surprised and not surprised.
Yeah, I wrote a whole long feature about it, and people should know you did not have a gun to my head. You didn't say anything. No, I found it interesting because it was one of those things where if you go back even to 2011 and look at what happened that year and then 12, the record is the record. Obviously, that is what happened to a team, but there's kind of a range of outcomes that you could have. And what happened in 2011, our favorite witch, Nate Silver, said it was like a 1 in 278 million chance. It was just so preposterous what happened. They blew a 9-game lead September 3rd, and the stuff that went down on the last day of the season was unbelievable. And even 2012 had a little bit of that. Even though a whole season isn't exactly a fluke, it was just such an unlikely outcome that everything could go wrong, that Ortiz and Pedroia and Ellsbury and all these guys were hurt, and Bobby Valentine was a disaster, and the pitching wasn't good. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And so when you look at 2013, and I missed too, by the way, I thought they would be, a little over 500, maybe something like that, but I didn't think they'd be great. But by the way, a little over 500 is still much better than last year, but I just thought they had 80 something, and it turned out that they were much better than that. And I think we just kind of missed on stuff. We missed on, Victorino and Napoli and Dempster being functional players and much better than the replacement level guys that we had. And especially missed on the fact that Ortiz and Ellsbury and Pedroia and the guys that were hurt are really good, and that having a new manager probably makes a little bit of difference, that all the bad things could potentially turn into good things.
The manager who I was very dubious of, because Toronto couldn't have seemed more anxious to get rid of him, right?
Yeah.
Which I thought was a red flag. But he came in, he seems like he knows what he did. He's handled the press really well. He hasn't, when you're managing in Boston, you're driving the yacht, basically. You just don't want to hit anything. And he's done a nice job of not hitting anything. I think the craziest thing of this season, though, other than Ortiz, who's on pace for 36 homers or something, but John Lackey. Where did John Lackey come from?
Yeah, that picture in spring training is what I just keep coming back to. And my friend Craig Calcaterra tracks this every year over at Hardball Talk. They talk about all the guys that are in the best shape of their life, and they just keep a whole catalog of it. And, this guy's in the best shape of his life. Either he bulked up 25 pounds and looks huge, or he went on the all kale diet and lost 25 pounds, whatever. And you look at Lackey, that picture is just like, that does not look like John Lackey. That looks like a different guy. But the results aren't always there when someone's in the best shape of their life. Well, I guess in this case it is the combination of him having surgery, which obviously helps, and losing weight, and maybe the fact that John Lackey also was never that bad. He just went through a bad stretch. They did sign him for $82 million. That in itself is not justification of anything, but clearly somebody saw something, and maybe this is a little bit of vindication for Theo and company, quite frankly, that they had they got booted out the door after a terrible season, and a lot was rained on their head. Oh, you screwed up. You did this wrong and that wrong. Yes, the Lackey contract is not going to end up earning 82, but maybe this guy was talented and things kind of went wrong for him and he was damaged goods or whatever. And him pitching as well as he has, I'd throw Daniel Nava and Jose Iglesias into the mix too. I think those two guys have performed better than expected. But, you've got this good core combined with a few surprises, and it's been great.
Iglesias, who is a really good shortstop prospect, but couldn't hit. And everyone's like, his glove will make it worth it, but he's not going to hit. And then his offense I'm sure he's an outlier, but still kind of amazing. I think the one thing this Red Sox team has, and I know Buchholz has been banged up lately, but they were on pace for a little bit. They had a chance to have potentially 5 starters, near 200 innings or over it. Which, if you can pull that off, that's pretty. Now Buchholz is hurt, but they have Lester right now 125 innings, Dempster 110, Felix is at 99, Lackey at 100. Like, that's when you have stability with your starters, it goes a long way. They have not had stability with the bullpen. or at least the first 6, 7, 8 weeks. But I don't know. I'm my guard's up with this team.
Well, there's a few things. I mean, first of all, Felix Dubron, by the way, is the guy that nobody's talking about, that you got Nava and Iglesias and Lackey, whatever. Dubron's turned into a good pitcher, and he's a homegrown guy. It's not like they paid big money for him or whatever. Not a lot of hype, but he's been good. And the good thing about the bullpen is that is on paper, it is the easiest thing to fix just because it doesn't cost much. If you want Matt Garza right now, or even Bud Norris, and the Red Sox don't, but if you did, then it would cost you a lot. If you want a guy to stabilize your bullpen, there's a lot of guys like that. You can get all kinds of decent pitchers who are going to help. So if that is the biggest problem on the team, which it probably is, that's good. That's a great sign. That means you're probably all set. I would say third base is probably the other thing, but whatever.
Middlebrooks, Middlebrooks.
Yeah, if you have a below average third baseman and you fix your bullpen, that's still good enough. I think it's going to come down to, the pitching will have to maintain. It's also a very good division. I mean, the Orioles are not going away. Tampa Bay is very good. It's exciting. This is one of my favorite AL East races in years, and that's potentially without the Yankees being a contender. Yeah,
and the reason we start off with the Red Sox isn't because I'm a Red Sox fan, but they have the best record in the American League, so that seems relevant. Tampa Bay, 2.5 games back, 55-41. Just every year I bet in the Tampa over now. It's a gambling tradition for me. Every year Vegas looks for reasons why they're going to be, around 85 to 87 wins. And every year Joe Madden does some stuff and they're better than you think and they start peaking at the right time. And it certainly seems like it's happened this year. But James Shields and Will Myers, one of the most controversial trades in a while, I feel like. Who I know it's way early. I mean, Will Myers, they just called him up last month. But would both teams do that trade again?
Well, it's funny we're talking about it now because my piece for tomorrow, I guess it's a little bit of a giveaway, but I'm planning to write about Shields, and not so much to defend the trade from the Royal standpoint, but just to say James Shields is really good. Anything you could have asked to James Shields, he's done. His win-loss record is terrible, but we know that's not all that relevant. It has to do with run support, blah, blah, blah. He's been great. That's not the problem. The problem is, what did the Royals envision as their window for contention? And people should go Google Rainey Gisserli and read the Royals piece. I mean, he did kind of the definitive one for us. And he talked all about, he knows all about the Royals, obviously. He talked all about that they just were not equipped to win necessarily. And I think that there was a little bit of maybe cognitive dissonance going on the part of the general manager where he'd been on the job for a while and there was pressure probably mounting. And they did have some good talent. The thought was, now we need to kind of tie the bow on it and take the next step. And they signed Irvin Santana. That's actually been pretty good.
Really good, yeah.
Yeah, Shields has been, very good. That's not a problem. The hitting is terrible, which is weird. It's those guys that you kind of expected to take the next step. Moustakas has not hit at all. Hosmer's finally hitting. I know that he's your fantasy bugaboo and has been for years. But second base has not worked out. Right field, partly because they got rid of Will Myers, has not worked out. They just got holes and holes in their lineup. And now the hole is so deep standings wise that I don't know if they can get out of it. So that puts them in a spot where Shields could have a great year. Nothing comes of it this year. And then he only has 1 year left on his contract. And then he's a free agent. Myers will have 6. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. We don't know if Myers is going to be a star, but they're sort of sacrificing a lot of upside to get Shields, who's great, but not for very long.
Yeah, it's a trade you make if you're one starting pitcher away from possibly winning the World Series. And, we see this happen in basketball a lot. I think basketball and baseball, maybe hockey to a lesser degree. GMs have been there for a while. It's basically the shitter get off the pot stage with the team and the GM, where it's, they're looking at each other like, all right, well, we're at year 5 or year 6, nothing's happening. And that's usually when the GM makes the panic move. And, if it doesn't work out, he's getting fired anyway. And if it does work out, he's saving his job. He doesn't care if Will Myers is going to be good 5 years from now because he's not going to be there. In basketball, this happened with the Toronto Raptors. They made that Rudy Gay trade.
Yep.
Took on his giant contract because that GM was like, I'm probably getting fired at the end of the year. Like, I'm going to take a swing at Rudy Gay. What the hell? It's really dangerous for a fan base when that happens because the fans aren't going anywhere. The GMs come and go. But if, it's funny reading Randy's Twitter. Well, it's not funny. It's kind of tragically funny. But, I was down in the dumps with a really bad Boston sports month. We've had an awesome run. I'm not complaining, big picture, but it was just like a lot of hits. Hernandez happens and Pearson Garnett and Doc leave and the Bruins blow and then you read Randy's Twitter feed and you're like, oh, it could be so much worse. This guy's like having a nervous breakdown every night on Twitter. I feel bad for the Royals fans. This is like, there's parallels to them in my fantasy team that me and Hedge have had the last 5 years. You bank on these prospects year after year, and the bottom line is most of them turn out to be letdowns, right?
Yeah, all that's true. Randy, by the way, is indirectly kind of the reason that I got into sports writing in the first place. And one of my longest term baseball friends, I was delighted when Grantland brought him aboard in the first place, and he's great. All that is true, and it does create a difficult situation. And to me, this goes to the most important element to running any sports franchise in any sport. And I think you and I might have talked about it a little bit. It's cohesiveness from the owner's box all the way to the coach or the manager. Yep. That's it. That's the thing. And the Red Sox had that for a while, by the way. Tito, and you had Theo, and even Lucchino, and they're all pulling in the same direction. Tampa Bay, I've covered them extensively. I mean, Stu Sternberg down to Joe Madden, that's it. They're all on the same page. I mean, an intern could walk into Joe Madden's office and say, let's do this thing, and the guy is 10 minutes out of college. Joe Madden's like, cool. And nobody, the general manager's not objecting, and the owner isn't, and it's all good. There are a few franchises like that. Oakland is like that, and that's why you're seeing them win with a small payroll again. They're very good that way. You could make that case for a couple of sports franchises. I think in some way, the Celtics did have that too, by the way. I mean, with Danny and so forth. I don't think Doc was the most analytical guy necessarily, but he was on board with the way things were going, and it all worked out. And if you have that, then that gives you hope that even if you do strip some pieces apart and if not rebuild, then at least reload or whatever, you could say, well, you know what? We've got the main guys in place. We feel pretty good about it. There is that cohesiveness. If you lose it, then even if you have talented players, sometimes it doesn't work out for you.
It's interesting with the Celtics. By the way, I just realized I'm doing this with a Skype headset. I think my mic was too close. So if I was torturing the listeners for the last 15 minutes, I'm sorry. The Celtics just did that with Brad Stevens. I think one of the big reasons they hired him was because he was out of all the college coaches. And it's weird to think college coaches using advanced stats because the guys are only there for a couple of years. But he was really into it. And they just hired some 23-year-old whiz kid. They've always had they've had one of the most biggest Sloan Conference representations for years and years, Mike Zarin, all those guys. Mm-hmm. And they're really going all in. And what you just talked about is one thing that makes me feel good about the franchise is from the owners on down, they're on the same page now. And I'm not sure that was the case all the time when Doc was there. And I don't know, the ex-players, there's a million examples. The ex-players don't love that stuff. They're eye test people. When the Rudy Gay trade happened, out of anything that happened all season on the NBA Countdown show I was on, that was the thing me and Jalen and Magic argued about the most because they're like, Rudy Gay's good. And I'm like, nope. No, he's not. Here are the numbers. And they're like, no, but he's good. And I'm like, but how do you explain these numbers? He's a 25% shooter from, and we just argue, and we're going in circles. And, it's interesting. I wonder, as this next generation, like Brad Stevens is 36, so he's younger than us. This next generation was kind of weaned on the stat era, and I wonder if that's where stuff's going now.
I think the best way to run it is to get the Jalens and the Magics of the world involved in decision making too, that they could be there on the scouting side and they could say, well, this guy can't go to his left or so forth. I mean, the actual decisions that are made on the court, the things that you see that are instinctual, that's fine. But then to actually run, the 5-man lineup, or in baseball, obviously it's even easier to do this stuff. That's where the mix is going to come in. And I don't think the Celtics are abandoning good old-fashioned scouting by any means. No. I just think it's being supplemented. I interviewed Stevens like 6 years ago, in a lifetime ago, for a small paper, and it was a fascinating interview. Even back then, the guy was, I think, maybe 29 or something, 30 years old. And we had this great talk, and Drew Cannon, a great piece by Baxter Holmes about Drew Cannon, by the way, that people should check out, just about what this guy's about. And he was a kid. He's still a kid in some senses, and he's going to play a role. It's really cool. And I think that it's always, my friend Dane Perry describes it very well in baseball. He used to say, well, this whole stats and scouts debate, it's like beer and tacos. Beer is delicious. Tacos are delicious. Why not just have both? Yeah.
And the best teams mix them, and I think Daryl Morey in Houston, who, one of the co-founders of the Sloan Conference, we know him. He's been on the podcast. He's considered a pioneer for somebody that used numbers. And I almost think there's been a misnomer with what the Rockets have done, where it's like, oh, he's, I was the one who named him Dork Elvis, but that's a piece of what they do. They also use traditional scouts too. Mikhail is somebody who is their coach and who gives them that side. And I think the best teams try to get input from all of the different directions. I think it would be dangerous to run any team just on numbers. I don't think that's a great idea. Speaking of numbers, Oakland, 56-39.
Yeah.
Explain that one to me.
Well, they have good pitching, which helps a lot. Bartolo Colon, That I don't know if I could explain. That's obviously we know that he was suspended and so forth, but all he does is pump fastballs in there. They're 90-mile-an-hour fastballs. He can put them wherever he wants, and you just have to hit them, and you cannot hit them. And it's amazing to me that he's been able to do that. But you go up and down the lineup. Here's one thing that I find interesting. Josh Reddick sucks this year. Jonas Cespedes kind of sucks too. And they still are this good. Jed Lowry was a great pickup, an ex-Red Sox, and he just kind of found his way. He was always a good player. He just never stayed healthy. This is the year that he has. They added John Jay, so it helps a little bit. But it's just pieces. It's a little bit like Tampa Bay, where this guy platoons and this guy comes out of the bullpen. Grant Balfour was a 2-year, $8 million deal. The Phillies are signing Papelbon for $1 billion. The A's get Balfour, and Balfour is better than Papelbon at this point for whatever percentage of the salary. They just identify talent, whatever you want to say, whether it's through scouting or stats or whatever. They just do a good job of that. They put the pieces together well, and they value depth. And that was one of the things about last year's Red Sox too, was yes, they had good frontline players, but when guys get hurt, Moro Gomez was playing last year. Moro Gomez does not belong in the big leagues. The A's would never have a Moro Gomez out there. Their plan B is always going to be pretty good, and even their plan C, they do that very, very well.
And it also helps the A's that it turns out the Angels, who everybody thought was going to be good, have been an atrocity. They're 5 games under 500. This happened a little bit with Toronto too. I actually thought Toronto was going to be. That was almost the second over under I did. I was going to go under on them. It was one of those. Everybody was counting them on paper, but there was no substance behind it. Like, it was all, they were counting a lot of people who hadn't really done it. Do you find that this is like a weird phenomenon, right? And it seems like it happens in baseball when you're getting a lot of attention for how good you're going to be in March. It really seems like it's counterproductive for the most part.
I think it goes to the way that rosters are constructed in baseball that's different than basketball. If you sign a superstar in basketball, he's a superstar. He's going to win you a ton of games. The best player in all of baseball is probably a 10-win player. 10 wins is a heck of a lot. There's no question about it. But if you sign a guy who has a big reputation, he's a 4 or 5-win player traditionally, and anything goes wrong, then that's not helping you that much. And Josh Hamilton, obviously, is the classic example of this. And the Angels are bad largely because of their pitching, but Hamilton has been a big disappointment too. Josh Hamilton was not going to win a pennant by himself, and neither was Albert Pujols, by the way. Baseball, it really does take, you have to have that depth. The whole idea of you get 2 or 3 stars and you surround them with good role players, that's NBA. That's not baseball. You do need to have that kind of prevalence of talent throughout the roster. And so when you get attention, you usually get attention not because you signed this clever guy who's a good utility, whatever, or a good 7th-inning pitcher. It's because you signed some super-duper star, but the super-duper star is not necessarily going to do it. And so the Jays got Dickey and Josh Johnson, Jose Reyes, they're all good players. I expected them to get better, and they are better than they were last year, but not as better as we thought. And in the case of the Angels, it's Hamilton and so forth. And even the Dodgers, right, they got Greinke. A lot was expected of them. Things have gone wrong. They've had injuries, certainly, but they're a 500 team as well. I just think it's a lesson in not overvaluing superstars, and especially guys on the open market, because if you're a free agent, it's implied that you're over 30. Pujols was over 30. Hamilton was over 30. And you cannot count on guys like that. Now, we thought year 5 or year 6 would be the bad one, but sometimes year 1, 2, and 3 are not as good because you're not as good as you were when you're 27 or 28 years old.
Our dude, Sean McIndoe, Down Goes Brown, our hockey writer for Grantland. It's funny. I was reading about he's writing about free agency the last few weeks and some of the trades that happen, and was talking about how when forwards peak, and how if you're paying big bucks for a forward who's in his 30s, you can't expect the same kind of results that you would think you were getting, because the odds are he peaked when he was 26, 27. Did remind me a little bit of what happens in baseball sometimes, right? Where by the time these guys are eligible for the big monster free agent deal, odds are you're paying for the season that, his best case scenario was 2 years ago. And all these teams are so smart. They study history. At some point, the teams are going to start shying away from these contracts, right? When is this going to happen? When is Josh Hamilton, who everybody knew all winter, like, yeah, you want to pay that guy year by year. Don't give that guy a big contract. Then the Angels were like, f it. And they just came in, and it's a disaster. Like, when are teams going to learn?
By the way, Sean and I troll each other about the hat. He's a Leafs fan. I'm a Habs fan. And then we realize that both of those teams suck, and what are we doing? That's a whole other story. But, it's a supply and demand issue. That's all there is to it. In the past, you kind of had somewhat limited talent on the free agent market? There's nobody now. Think about everybody that re-upped. Felix, Verlander, Votto, Kane. They're not available. And so you get down to it. You got Greinke and Josh Hamilton and Johnny Gomes. And that's your free agent market. And so you just have to decide what's going to happen. Somebody's going to pay the money. The thing about baseball teams is it might not be a good dollars per WAR equation or whatever. But the idea is you hope, let's say you're the Angels. So Mike Trout is making 10 cents and he is, if not the best player in baseball, then top 5. Well, that kind of defrays a little bit of taking a chance on Pujols and Hamilton, that you've got a superstar who's 21 and makes no money. You can do it, and you're very profitable, and you have a $2 billion TV contract, and it's all fine. So they don't view it as a good deal. You and I could sit here and say, well, this is obviously a bad deal. Yeah, in a way it is, but I mean, if he helps your team, then you acknowledge that it's an overpay. Maybe Hamilton is an $80 million player, and you're willing to pay him 100. The problem is you pay him 125, and it turns out that he might be 40. That's terrible. And that's really what it comes down to is, you're okay with the overpay. It just shouldn't be a huge overpay. Greinke, I would say that the jury's still out a little bit on him. It might be that he earns a good chunk of that money, but there have been guys. CC Sabathia, when he signed with the Yankees, that worked out great. The very first A-Rod contract, even though the team that he signed with Texas was terrible, A-Rod was the best player in the league probably, if not every year, then almost every year, and there were reasons for that. But, that's all fine and good. So it is possible to do well on the free agent market, but if you're talking about getting a bargain, the top of the market guy is very rarely going to be the bargain. By the way, totally different than the NBA. LeBron is automatically a bargain because of the cap. LeBron is probably worth, I don't know, $60 million or something.
Yeah,
but he'll never
80.
ever make that. Maybe 80. He'll never make that kind of money, but baseball doesn't work that way. It's totally different.
You left out my favorite example of a free agent contract that worked out great. Manny Ramirez.
That's right. That was a great, and what's so funny is there was so much irrational exuberance that winter because the stock market had gone bananas. And so all these companies or even individuals who own teams were just crazy. And I live here in Colorado. Nobody will ever let you forget about Denny Nagel and Mike Hampton. Mike Hampton, who famously, after signing a $120 million contract, they asked him, why did you sign with the Rockies? What made you decide to do that? Tough team, tough place to pitch in, not necessarily a great team. He goes, I love the public schools, the best schools. And they do have great schools here, but that's, it came down to irrational exuberance, and the Rockies paid the price, but the Red Sox didn't. That was a great signing. And by the way, I'm always a Dan Duquette fan, so I'm always going to back Duke, and that was a good move by him.
Yeah, and that was one of those, look, we need a guy, just what's your price? We're paying it. And it just kept going up there. Well, we're still going to pay it, and it goes higher and higher. But yeah, that was an era of a lot of bad contracts, and the Manny one was one of the only ones that really worked out. But I'm looking at the 2014 free agent list right now. Robinson Cano, to me, fits this conversation, right? Like, I'm going to look how old he is. He's over 30, right?
30 or 31, I want to say off the top of my head.
He was born in 1982. So you were paying him, he'll be 31. Yeah, he'll be 31 in year one of that contract in 2014. Mm-hmm. He is the best player on the market by far out of all the hitters. Unless you're a giant Sinso Chu fan. Well, actually, I guess Ellsbury, you could, he's on pace for 70 stolen bases. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Cano and Ellsbury are the two big hitters. Both of them are going to get wildly overpaid because, as you said, there's no free agents. Everybody got taken care of.
Yep.
But Cano, I wouldn't give that guy $225 million. He might have had his career this year. This might be his career right now.
Yeah, and what's funny is that he's probably not even the best player in the league in his career year either. That's Miguel Cabrera right now. But yeah, Cano's interesting because he's got a pretty diverse skill set. You sort of wonder about these kind of big fat sluggers who sign contracts. That did work out with Manny, but sometimes it doesn't because if their bat even slows a little bit, they got nothing. They can't run the bases. They don't give you any defensive value or positional value. Cano's a second baseman and a pretty good one. But the flip side to that is that second basemen have a very high attrition rate. It's hard to say why. It might be they get spiked on the double play a lot, and the lateral movement. I don't know. But that's what's been found over the years is second basemen tend to, not quite like catchers do, but they do tend to have problems in a way that first basemen and outfielders don't. So then the question becomes, okay, do you move Cano? Does he become your first baseman or your left fielder? Well, sure, but then he's less valuable because he's a first baseman or left fielder. There's all this catch-22 stuff. Someone's going to overpay him. And again, the hope is he gets 225 and he's worth 165, and then you live with that because let's say it's the Dodgers, for instance. The Dodgers have Mark Ellis. He's on his way out as a second baseman. The Dodgers have more money than God. We both know that. Okay, so they give him something, and they say, you know what, it's fine. We're willing to take on Carl Crawford and Josh Beckett. No problem taking on Robinson Cano, who's a much better player than either of those two guys.
I want to go over some American League numbers that jumped out at me.
Okay.
the National League fans, look, I'm sorry. I don't watch that much National League. If you want to listen to people talk
I write about the National League
League
frequently. You can read Grantland.com. I get 4,500 words on the Milwaukee Brewers. Don't worry. You guys are covered.
Yeah, read Grantland. There's other podcasts. Don't take it personally. So I'm just going to throw out some numbers at you, and you give your quick reactions.
Sure.
The Yankees, 3.74 team ERA.
That's strong. And if their hitting was anything decent, they have 5 terrible guys in their lineup. If they had any kind of hitting, they could be in first place. The pitching has been great. Kuroda is one. You talk about free agent signings. There's your bargain. Kuroda is one of the best free agent bargains that I've seen in 20 or 25 years. Unbelievable.
Wow.
They signed him. Yeah. So good. He's so good. Go look at Kuroda's numbers. Pitching in Yankee Stadium, a right-handed pitcher with that short porch. Nobody can hit this guy. And there was so much skepticism because he came over from the NL West, Dodger Stadium, 36, 37, 38 years old. No, man, he's been fantastic. And that bullpen's been very good too. A lot of kind of unknown, relatively anonymous young pitchers who've been great alongside Mariano Rivera and Robertson. And so that's all worked out well. I think the attention gets paid on Jabba, who's, high profile guy and kind of stinks. And Phil Hughes has a little bit of that too. But the other guys have been really good. And this is, by the way, with Sabathia, he's kind of on the way down. He doesn't have the velocity that he used to. He's not an ace anymore, but they have balance. They basically have 9 or 10 really good pitchers, and that's made a big difference for them. That's the only reason they're in the race, because their lineup kind of stinks. They have a negative run differential right now.
Yeah, I would say the pitching staff has overachieved. Kuroda, by the way, 2.65 ERA, 105 WHIP.
That's pretty good.
Sabathia and Pettit are both over 4 ERA.
Yeah.
Hughes is at 4.57.
Yeah.
I was shocked when I saw that because I was just looking up different numbers. I'm like, Jesus, they're under 4 runs a game with. It's not like it's a murderer's row. Kuroda, I'm stunned by too. I just for some reason didn't think he was going to be great for them. All right, Manny Machado, 39 doubles.
Yeah, that's interesting. Earl Webb has a record. What is that? 67. That puts him right about on pace if I'm doing my math correctly. Maybe even a bit ahead of pace. And there's always on pace for everything every year. But here's the thing about Machado. What if those doubles turn into home runs? He's 20, 21
right
now.
Right? Like when he turns 25?
Does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, usually your power peak tends to come later on. The fact that he's even a competitive play. We're so spoiled by Trout and Harper and Machado. This is not normal. Ken Griffey Jr., Robin Yount, you're talking about generational guys who come up at 18 or 19 or 20 and they're good. That almost never happens. These guys are phenomenal. Did you see that play that he made against the Yankees when he basically kicked the ball and he threw the guy out from the dugout? It was like Brooks Robinson, but better. I mean, the numbers are great, but you know what? Just aesthetically, he's such a joy. I love that guy. And here's the crazy part, the craziest of the crazy parts. He's a shortstop. He shouldn't be playing third base. His natural position is shortstop. He came up as a shortstop. J.J. Hardy was the starter on the All-Star team, but he's only got 1 year left on his contract. I hope it's tempting to keep a guy. You don't want to mess with a good thing, but if they put him at shortstop, this could be even crazier. Imagine him doing this stuff, but at short and hitting 39 doubles, which might turn into home runs and all that. He's an elite player already. He's great. And the thing is about the Orioles, they don't have good pitching this year, but between Chris Davis and Manny Machado, that's why they are where they are.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how long does this last? Because he's got to be the best fielding third baseman. Just consistent, amazing plays. It seems like he's on Baseball Tonight 3 times a week. You mentioned Brooks Robinson. It's a natural tie-in because of the Orioles thing, but I'm trying to remember like other third basemen. I can't remember somebody who was consistently this ridiculous.
Beltre was phenomenal in his prime.
You think he was on this level?
It's different. He wasn't as spectacular, and he did things differently. Like, for instance, there was nobody in baseball. This is very specific, but there's nobody in baseball who would make the bare hand and throw the guy out better than Beltre. I swear that he did that at 100%. I'm sure the stats would prove me wrong, but he just was great at that. But Machado he's built differently. Also, Beltre's kind of a big guy, and he has good reactions and so forth. Machado has this lean shortstop sort of body at third, so he just does things that are not normal. You see these like David Wright, Miguel Cabrera. There are some big third basemen in baseball. He's totally different. He's just like a speed skater or something out there. It's amazing. Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's early in his career. I don't want to throw too much hyperbole around, even though we are. But it's hard to find good comps that I can think of. Beltre in the recent past would be the best. But if you go back years and years, I think if he does this for a couple more years, you're going to have to make those comps with some of the best of all time for sure.
He reminds me, and I know people have said this, but he's very young A-Roddy when you look at him, like just the way he's built. And we had in League of Dorks, we had the number 1 pick in 2011. there was the first spring people started really talking about him as a monster prospect, and we took Zach Britton over him. And it just couldn't have worked out worse. I make fun of GMs all the time. Yeah, I make fun of GMs all the time. I love doing it. I don't think you can find a worse decision than that. I really think that might be the worst decision anyone's ever made in sports and fantasy or real life.
Jody Reed.
So then they have not only him, but this Chris Davis thing, which, speaking of League of Dorks, the guy who finished his first or second every year in our league has just been married to Chris Davis for forever. Ever since Chris Davis was born, I think he drafted him and just wouldn't give up on him. Just so, people are like 38 home runs. He's got to be cheating. Like it was always like conceivable that he was going to be a 40 home run guy. I just didn't think they were going to happen before the All-Star break of a season. But you watch him and it's like, he just crushes the ball. I don't know. It's weird because me, we're on the opposite sides of the spectrum. I always start from the thing of, I probably think you're doing something unless you prove to me you're not, just because we've been burned so many times and you're on the opposite end. Oh, everybody deserves due process. I believe in this Chris Davis thing. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, and another crazy long piece I did for Grantland, but I got into it and we had animated GIFs and this, that, or the other. And what it amounts to is he is doing things with pitches that he couldn't he's doing things now that he couldn't do with pitches that he used to not be able to handle. These pitches that are either outside corner or even off the plate. If you're Tony Gwynn back in the day, you'd flip that over the shortstop's head. You reach out and do that. He flips it 3 rows deep in the left field stands. Now, obviously, you need natural power to do that. Sure, that's all true. And if you want to go down that slope, you could say, yes, X and Y gets you stronger. But to me, it just comes down to approach because he did have that power. He was 33 home runs in 139 games last year. In the minors, he showed power. He's always been big, like huge. I mean, that's never been the issue. I just think that he's just doing a better job with all that stuff. And he'll lay off pitches too. That's the other thing is in the past, he would either try to pull everything and he just ground out to second, or he would just swing and miss flat out. And we went into that in the piece a little bit where it would just be like identical pitches. It'd be a changeup thrown by this pitcher in 2012 versus in 2013. A totally different results. And yes, it's cherry picking a little bit, but you could see that he was just, his eye was on the ball longer. And, if he had to go the opposite field, he would. He's just like a souped up Tony Gwynn right now. He could just hit anything out of the park at any time.
And I also think, we forget this part too. Home runs can be streaky.
Yep.
Like it wouldn't shock me if he ended up at 49 and it's not like he'd have to have a huge batting average, but sometimes, you hit the top of the wall. You go on a run where you're playing in stadiums that aren't really homer conducive. Like, I don't think necessarily he's going to hit 70 or anything. I wouldn't be shocked. Miggy's like 8 behind him.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if Miggy passed him, would you?
He's the best best hitter on earth, so that wouldn't shock me at all. No, and I think it goes to the way that we perceive numbers too. And now we're at the All-Star break, we're 90 odd games in, so it is it's definitely a huge outlier or incredible or whatever you want to say that he's done this long. But generally speaking, the only data that we have to go on is whatever has happened. At the end of the year, we could say clear-mindedly, well, so-and-so, this happened. Guys that stunk at the beginning of the like if I was in a fantasy league, I'd go get BJ Upton right now. BJ Upton looks like he couldn't hit in Little League right now. But there's no way he's hitting 150 whatever all season because that's not how baseball works. It just doesn't make – sometimes it's 20 games, occasionally it's 60, once in a blue moon it's 90, but it's almost never 160. And so that's how I feel about Davis too is – it's like you said, this is off the charts, 99.9% percentile, but the odds of it maintaining just by virtue of random chance, like you said, the ball could hit the wall or he turns an ankle. I mean, I'm not rooting for that, but stuff like that can happen. And the odds are definitely against him hitting 7 home runs. Not impossible, but unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, he could tweak a tricep muscle.
Sure.
We just saw he played, a little more than 3 months. Totally healthy, crushing the ball, felt great. There was a couple times with the Red Sox where Manny would go on these streaks and he'd be like, oh my God. And then he'd get dinged by a pitch on his left wrist or something and it would just end, and it would just change the momentum of whatever. Although Bill Barnwell doesn't believe in momentum. But yeah, I think Chris Davis just put together 3.5 awesome months. I don't think it means he's going to hit 75 homers. Now, You flip it around the other way with Pujols, who 324 on base, 429 slugging. Those are JJ Hardy type numbers. 18 double plays jumps out at me because I remember when Jim Rice started losing it, those double plays started piling up. 15 homers, though. So it's not like he's a catastrophe, but he's one of the highest paid athletes in the history of sports. Like, this is year 2 of a really long, really expensive contract. This is not good.
And that's why I like diversified skill sets, too, because like you talk about the double plays, if it's not a home run, then yeah, there's a very good chance it could be a double play, assuming there's a guy on first or whatever, because he's losing that. I mean, and that has to do with injuries and so forth, and people could explain that away. They could say, well, we're not seeing the full Pujols because he's got whatever, the plantar fasciitis or the hamstring or whatever it is. But that's the whole point. That's what happens when you're over 30. It's what happens here if you're a desk jockey over 30. And it sure as hell is what happens if you're a professional athlete over 30 is not only does your ability start to go and your reaction time, you get injured. That is just normal. I mean, the thing that, and I don't want to pour it on too hard because poor Andy Greenwald has taken enough of this. But Ryan Howard, when that contract was signed, Howard was a very good player. There's no doubt about it. But he was a big dude who hit home runs, and that's all he had to offer. And if that starts to go even a little bit, then everything starts to go. And sure enough, and it's been worse than expected, obviously injuries and all that. But it's just that the big barrel-chested slugger, Mo Vaughn. God, I'm sure you still have nightmares about that guy. That was a terrible contract. There's all these things that just can go wrong with a player like that. And so we talk about Cano. He's old and so forth, but he does have some other skills. Not fast, but at least a good fielder, this, that. Ellsbury, you never know with Ellsbury because right now, he's still a good fielder and he runs and he has some power and he hits for average. If he loses 2 of the 5 tools, he still might be a $15 million a year player, even if he's not 20. So that's the thing is you kind of want to get that, like I said, diversified skill set. Bobby Abreu lasted late in his career because he was kind of that good all-around player. Not necessarily the super-duper stars, or at least the guys that we think of that way, but these guys that have these nice abilities to kind of, here's my fallback if this goes wrong.
Right. And just for the record, we don't really talk about double plays enough, in my opinion, because they're 18 is a lot.
Yeah.
The record is 36 by my friend Jim Rice, who also has second place all time with 35. I almost wonder if that should be part of on base. If your at bat is worth 2 outs, it feels like that should be reflected in something.
It is reflected in the advanced stats, so you can find it there.
But like not the traditional.
Not like on base. We're talking like WRC plus and more complicated stuff. But it's in there. And even then you have to be, I don't want to go too far in Pujols and Rice, even though it's easy. You have to keep in mind who's hitting in front of you. So, and this was toward the end of Rice's career, mind you, but he did have Wade Boggs in front of him for a little while. Wade Boggs was the best on base guy, I don't know, maybe of the decade. If he's getting on base all the time, there's going to be more chances for double play. So there are ways to even strip that out and say, what are the double plays per chance? Same way you could do RBIs per chance. All that stuff is tracked. So yes, it is bad that Pujols has a lot of stuff, but I'd want to know how many times is Mike Trout has a very high on base percentage and hits in front of Pujols. I'm going to give Pujols at least a little bit of slack for that. I think that does factor into it somewhat.
So the 83 Red Sox had Rice and Tony Armas, 31 double plays apiece.
Wow.
62.
And Boggs hit in front of them. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Boggs hitting in front of him, hitting 361, and then just routinely getting thrown out at second base as those two guys sitting there.
Right, and that's the other thing. Sure. Boggs didn't run, too, so you had the highest on-base guy in the league and like the slowest guy in the league. I mean, that's tailor-made for double plays. So, yeah, that was an extreme situation, absolutely.
That is
was a
true.
Funny
so
team.
Jim Rice in 1980, 16 double plays, 1981, 14. Boggs shows up in 82 for the full season. He goes 29, 31, 36, 35 the next 4 years.
Poor Wade Boggs.
As slow Wade Boggs holding his chicken, jogging to second base. Hold on, I have a couple more stats, and then we're going to wrap up.
Yeah.
Raul Ibanez, 24 homers on the Mariners. He's like my age.
So I talked to Eric Shaw. I did a little thing with Eric Chavez earlier this year. Fascinating guy, super smart, whatever. And he played for the Yankees briefly before we're going over to Arizona after Oakland. And he talked about working out with Raul Ibanez. And yes, anybody over 40, there's a lot of suspicion and stuff like that. And what Chavez said, you can take it or leave it, but this is what he said. They would go on, like we're talking about hot yoga and like this, the most punishing stuff, but not benching 600 pounds punishing stuff, just like crazy running in extreme conditions and sweating your ass off and Pilates and all this stuff that is just like hardcore. And he'd do it 6 times a day. That Raul Ibanez might be the biggest fitness freak, like the Jerry Rice of Major League Baseball, basically. To even be playing over 40 is one thing. To be doing it that well is another. Again, in the past, people said, oh, this guy's a fitness freak. He does Pilates. Well, it turned out he did something else. I'm not making any comments on Raul Ibanez one way or another, but it's just to point out that we know that he's dedicated to his craft. We can at least say that much about it. And it's worked out great. And what's so funny is he leaves Yankee Stadium, he goes to Seattle, and even granting that they brought the fences in, it's still Seattle. It's not exactly a home run haven. So it's pretty interesting, and it sets up an interesting scenario where if he gets traded, where does he go, and would he perform as well, and all this stuff? You know, the Yankees need a hitter. What if they traded back to get him and he gets that short porch back? I don't know. It's a fascinating thing. It's one of the great untold stories in baseball. I haven't even seen that much written about it, to be honest with you. But yeah, he's old and he's been really good.
The Seattle part is the strangest thing, not the age.
Yeah.
Like if somebody had 40 homers, played for the Mariners, I was thinking, I mean this in the most humorous, joking way possible. But you know how they have like they have the Golden Glove. What's the hitting award called?
The Hank Aaron Award?
No, the one for each position. It's like the Silver Slugger.
Silver Slugger. Yeah.
I think they should have the P in the Cup All-Star team at the end every year. Just like, hey, we're not saying anything. Would have been nice to see a P in a Cup. And but I think Ibanez is definitely on it. Bartolo Colon, especially because he's been caught.
But the thing about Colon that kills me is his results are great, but I'm trying to wrap my head around how he got there. He throws 90-mile-an-hour fastballs, which he did, before too. It's not like he pumped up his fastball. Thing. Yeah, he has great control, and I don't know. I'm not saying yes or no, whatever. Yes, he has been busted before. Obviously, that raises suspicion. It's hard to say, but his physique doesn't suggest it. His velocity doesn't suggest it. Yeah. No, certainly not. I just, another guy that I wrote about is just like, at a certain point, I'm just tipping my cap to the guy. I'm like, whatever it is that you did, it's wildly entertaining to watch right now.
Yeah. Somebody who I don't need to see pee in a cup, but I'm glad he's doing well again. Joe Mauer is quietly
love him.
Putting together his second really good season. And this was somebody, I remember we talked about, I think, 2011 when he started popping up in trade rumors. You could have his contract if you wanted. Nobody bit. I thought that would have been a really, these teams that have tons of money, if you're rolling the dice on a big contract, why not roll it with a catcher, especially him? I think teams blew it. The Dodgers should have gotten him.
Yeah, I mean, it's an open question about how available he was. I think that's something we don't know exactly. But the thing about Mauer is his career high in home runs is 28. His second best season is 13. So you just have to appreciate the kind of player that he is. He's a Wade Boggs catcher is what he is, which is great, and an inner circle Hall of Famer, by the way. But we have to accept the fact that 2009 is probably not coming back. That was your 444 on base, 587 slugging, and he hit 28 home runs. I mean, that makes him the best player on the planet were he to do that, especially as a catcher. But he's phenomenally good, pretty durable. He's had a couple of injury-prone years. I guess 2011 was really the big one, come to think of it. For the most part, it's been pretty good that way. And he's a supernatural hitter. I mean, just the singles and doubles come off his bat. And it's great. And the thing about that kind of contract is, again, what are you going to get on the open market? Maybe it's an overpay, but this is a Minnesota born and bred guy, number one pick, and he's really good. Okay, so he's worth 157 instead of 184. I don't think the Twins are sweating it too much. I think they regret the Justin Morneau contract for different reasons. But Joe Mauer, even if the ability starts to go a little bit, if he's giving you a 375 on base instead of 400 at catcher and playing 140 games, I mean, that's great. That's an all-star every single season.
I think in 2011 they would have run from that contract. They won 63 games that year.
Yeah. And that was the year to get 82 games. Yeah.
You know what's great about Joe Mauer? I think this is interesting. This year, his splits are 320 batting average, 402 on base, 473 slugging. Lifetime, 10-year career, 323 batting average, 405 on base, 468 slugging. He's basically having the perfect typical Joe Mauer season. And this is year 10 for him.
Do you understand how unusual it is for a catcher, his average season to be 320, 400, 470? We talk about the Fisks and those guys. No way. They were not this good, man. This is crazy stuff. I don't think we properly appreciate this guy. And he's just, if he continues along this path, he'll go down as one of the greatest players of all time. I mean, he like you said, he is only 30. Catchers, it doesn't always go that well in their 30s. But if he gives you 3 or 4 or 5 more really good years, yeah, that's going to be huge. And the Twins have many, many problems. Joe Mauer is certainly not one of them. And I love watching this guy. I'll watch. I have MLB.TV and I can watch anything, and my coverage is self-directed. I can run anything I want on a given day. I'll turn on the Twins all the time. I love watching this guy play. They're not a good team, but I like watching Joe Mauer. I think he's just terrific.
Right now, he has the 45th highest on base percentage ever in the history of baseball.
That's crazy.
And I'm looking at if there's another catcher on there. And
you might have to strip out the dead ball era guys like Billy Hamilton. And I bet if you did it, as of when you take away like the old school guys.
Like Lefty O'Doul?
Yeah, Lefty O'Doul. If you take out the Lefty O'Douls and the Billy Hamiltons, he might be 30 or 35 or something.
I don't even see, maybe I'm missing somebody, but I don't see another catcher in the top 100. I guess Wally Shang was a catcher, right?
Yes.
I remember him. Yeah, he was a catcher. I remember him from my What If Sports days. He was one of those on-base catchers. But
like Yogi and Dickey and the greatest, of all time, none of those guys got on base like this. No way.
Hey, here's an idea, LA Dodgers. Instead of giving Andre Ether $81 million, you should just try to trade for Joe Mauer. You would have been fine. I got 2 more stats for you.
Yeah.
Iwakuma on the Mariners. He's got that 937 whip right now. I mean, you're .937 as a starting pitcher. That is no joke.
Yeah, the regression train is smacking him in the face over the last few starts. So he got lit up right before the break. I think it's been maybe 5 of his last 7 have been really bad. It started.
So you're saying trade him in fantasy?
I wrote on April 26th. You could look it up on Grantland. I said if there's one thing I would recommend that you do, it's trade Iwakuma on April 26th. Now you would have missed out on a couple of good starts, but you would have missed out on this roller coaster ride of a disaster too. So yeah, the thing, his batting average on balls in play was like 180 and all that. He's a very good pitcher. It's a great find for a team that's lacking for talent, but that's not going to last. It's going to get worse as the season goes on.
And then Mike Trout, this always happens. The sophomore jinx, once again, 322, 400 on base, 565 slugging, 30. Terrible. He's on pace for 30 homers, 42 steals. Like, it's just sad to see a guy fall apart like that.
At such an early age, too. Yeah, it's you know what? I just looked at this right now. His on base last year was 399. This year, 399. His slugging last year was 564. This year, it's 565. And his batting average is down 4 points. This is a carbon copy. See, advanced stats, it's carbon copy. All this on pace for about the same 10 WAR and all that. He's still stealing bases. He's still doing it all. His defense by the advanced stats is down a little, but that's variable and weird and whatever. He's phenomenal. He's great. And, it gets lost a little bit. I wrote about I did some midseason awards this week and I was writing about who I thought the best players were and all that. And a guy like a Trout or David Wright or even Buster Posey a year after, they win the World Series and all these guys are having great years. But we miss it. Unless you're a big fantasy player, we just miss this stuff because the Angels suck and the Giants are 8 games under 500 and the Mets suck and whatever. And again, it's not really like basketball, where in basketball, usually if some guy puts on big stats on a 20-win team, it's probably because he's, Jennings and he's scoring 25 points a game, but he's shooting 30% or whatever. But you can have legit superstars on terrible teams in baseball, and it happens all the time. And every team, the Yankees and the Red Sox all wish they could have Trout or Mauer or whatever. And it's not going to be that way. These are the building blocks that you hope is when we get good again, all right, we'll surround these guys with whoever. Trout is, the sky's the limit. He could be Mickey Mantle. He could be better. I mean, he's just, I cannot remember somebody like him. People talk about Harper and so forth. Trout's the guy to beat still to me.
He might be a robot. Not entirely sure he's human.
His neck is bigger than everything. It's crazy. I don't. And
the parallel is LeBron, right? I mean, even LeBron came into the NBA and he looked like a 28-year-old man. He was 18, and Trout, thinking that he would be a college junior.
Yeah,
it's insane.
It's insane. American born, they're just, we know this guy. We've known this guy for a while. He was 25th in the draft, by the way. And the book on him was that he was going to have speed. And even in the minors, he put up good speed numbers, but he hit, I'm looking, 2011 was probably the biggest sample of high level games right before he got called up. He had 11 home runs in 91 games, stole 33 bases. That's what you expected from Trout. I mentioned Bobby Abreu. That's not a bad comp. A good all around player with a lot of speed early in his career would kind of grow into his power as his speed fell off. No. Mickey Mantle probably is the better comp. Willie Mays is the better comp. Not saying he's going to be as good as those guys over time, but certainly right now when you look at that diversified skill set, that's what he is. He's that incredible mix of skills that does not exist.
In 15 seconds, give us an American League team that you think is going to come on in the second half of the season. I know the answer, but our podcast listeners may not.
Well, I think the Tigers are going to blow everybody away in the league, and I think that's definitely going to happen. They were 1.5 up, but I think that they'll take care of business, and I think that the Baltimore and Tampa Bay are both going to challenge Boston as well.
All right. Well, next time we do this, we'll talk National League, and we could talk about my illegitimate son who plays for the Braves, Simmons. and how he's one of the best defensive players in the league now, right? He's up there.
Were you that slick fielding in Little League?
I was. Well, he has my genes.
That makes sense.
I'm really excited. There's a good Simmons again.
Yeah.
In baseball, it really has to go back, I think, to Ted Simmons. I think that was the last good one.
Ted Simmons should be in the Hall of Fame. He was a great player.
Switch hitter, catcher, on base.
Actually, yeah, he's a prototypical Joe Mauer a little bit.
Yeah. All right, Jonah Keri, keep up the great work on Grantland. We will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, it's been a while. People are clamoring for it. They don't understand what happened. They think we're in a fight. We're not in a fight. I just haven't been watching baseball. Now I'm watching baseball again, so it's time to call my buddy JackO, diehard Yankee fan. He's on vacation. He knows we're calling. We're going to bother him. Let's give him a ring.
Hello?
Johnny!
What's up, buddy?
How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Congratulations on being named one of the stars of Sharknado 2. I'm really proud of you.
It's really a dream come true. I hope my acting can stand up with those greats.
So it's on my DVR. I haven't watched it yet. I can watch it with the kids, right? They're kind of excited for Sharknado.
Well, it's a little. There's a lot of blood. I mean, people die violently, but depending on your kid's tolerance for that. I mean, there's no sex. There's no bad language, obviously, because it was on Sci-Fi. But it's bloody. There's some blood.
Well, I'm watching it with them. I don't care. They've seen blood before. Ian Ziering might never act again. This is their last chance to see IZ in action. With a chainsaw.
They got. Well, I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. He lives to possibly be in Sharknado 2.
I heard.
would think both he and Tara Reid are going to answer the phone pretty quickly if it rings.
Let's talk about. We'll go back to this because I need to see it, and then I'll have a lot of thoughts, and we can go back and forth on it. But the AllStar Game. So I missed the AllStar Game. I was at an ESPYs party,
actually, but I saw the Mo highlight.
So Mariano Rivera pitches a 1-2-3 8th inning and gets the MVP. What the hell happened?
Well, I mean, that was like when Magic won the MVP in the All-Star Game. No offense to your co-host. It was like the guy's retiring, and it's sort of like, a retirement present, the equivalent of a gold watch. So I couldn't believe it when I woke up the next day. I'm on vacation this week, so, I didn't see it on TV here. We're at a beach cottage. And after spending all day at the beach with 2 kids, you have a tendency to go to bed fairly early. So I didn't catch the end of the All-Star Game. But I saw on ESPN that he got the MVP and, both dugouts giving him the standing O when he came in. And I was confused as to why he pitched the 8th and not the 9th. But I guess Leland had a good point that he was afraid if the National League came back in the 8th, then Mo wouldn't get into the game in any crucial situation. And as Skip Bayless said on the 2 minutes of First Take I watched yesterday, nobody on the AL team had more than 1 hit, so it's not like somebody hit 3 home runs and got screwed out of the MVP. So, and really, it's the All-Star Game MVP. I mean, can you bounce your kids on your knee and tell them who won the last 5 of those? No,
I think we spend the amount of time we spend talking about the All-Star Game versus the amount that people actually care about it or watch it. It has to be the biggest disparity in any sports meet anything. Like Yasiel Puig, I said it correctly. Yasiel Puig. And it was just 2 weeks of debate. It was like Roe versus Wade. People weighing in. Let's go. Blah, blah, blah. It was like the most important thing ever. It's like, who cares? Guy's going to have an at-bat and you might throw at somebody.
People were over the top about it. And, the Yankees, my beloved New York Yankees, really, I'm going to go so far as to say embarrassed themselves with this campaign to get Dave Robertson at the All-Star Game. He was one of the 5 guys to be the last guy voted in, and like the amount of tweets sent out by the New York Yankees and the amount of energy expended during Yankee broadcasts to vote Dave Robertson into the All-Star Game. I'm like, this is ridiculous. You're the New York Yankees. You've won 27 championships. You're the most successful sports franchise, certainly in North America, and this is what it's come to. Like we have to prostrate ourselves to try and get Dave Robertson, our setup guy, into the All-Star Game. This is the be-all and the end-all.
I'll tell you this, Johnny. It wouldn't have happened when the boss was alive.
No, of course not. It's been like, take him or don't take him. We don't care, but I'm not gonna beg you and like throw myself at your feet. Please bring Dave Robertson to the All-Star game. Give me a freaking break.
If you did your top 10 list of things that would have been so much more fun if George Steinbrenner was still in his live and thrown in the mid-90s, that everything about this A-Rod thing would be number one, right?
Of course, yeah.
He'd be unbelievable.
At the time, but losing 4 games to the Mets earlier this year, oh my God. He would have gone through the clubhouse like a Sharknado if that happened.
Steinbrenner NATO.
Steinbrenner NATO would have gone through and just cleaned house.
The Jay-Z taking over Robinson Cano, that whole thing, I think that would have been fantastic with Steinbrenner.
Yeah.
Him negotiating with Jay-Z.
For people to explain to Steinbrenner who Jay-Z was, but.
Well, he would have somehow taken it personally. I don't know how.
Yeah, no doubt.
He'd be like, what does he do? I don't care what he sings. He's not getting $220 million.
That's right. That's right.
The Rivera comeback season, what's he at, 30 saves?
Yeah, he's having a phenomenal year. I think he only has one blown save. He blew one a few weeks ago against Baltimore. Yeah, he's really great. But he is adamant that this is it because, obviously the rumblings start to stir about, well, you said you're going to hang it up, but you're pitching like it was 10 years ago. Like, why not keep going? But he's adamant about this is all she wrote. So it's really going to be a rude awakening in the future and next year when you don't have Mo coming in anymore. It's really going to be, the Yankee fans, all of us will not realize how spoiled we were until we have to live with the aforementioned Dave Robertson as our closer.
I'm going to enjoy it so much when he comes back. Will they have to give him the All-Star MVP car again? Would just keep getting it every year until he actually retires?
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. He still gets the MVP in the car, right?
But Seal's like, can you send that 2013 All-Star MVP car to Chris Sale? Since he pitched one more scoreless inning than you did in that game and we thought you were retiring.
Exactly.
I don't think he should retire. I don't like it. I need give me some signs of attrition, right? He's having the same season he's had for 20 years. He can't retire yet.
I know. He's mowing guys down. It's not like he's got 30 saves, but they've been shaky or he's been putting guys on or anything. He's been the Rivera of old. He doesn't throw quite as hard as he did, but the cutter still fools him, still breaks bats, But he's been on the full retirement tour, and teams are giving him gifts in the whole 9 yards. So it's hard if you come back from that. I don't know if you have to get what the protocol is if you have to give the gifts back then.
I think
he's a family guy. I think he wants to go spend time with his family. He's been playing for the Yankees for 20 years,
Listen, we have families.
True.
I'd pick playing more baseball. You can see your family every once in a while, Mariano. Because try 365 days with them is going to be rough.
I'm at the beach right now with my wife, a 7-year-old, and a 2-year-old. I almost went back to work yesterday voluntarily.
Like, John, what are you doing here? Oh, I had some paperwork I had to catch up on.
Just wanted to catch up on stuff, yeah.
These athletes that want to spend time with their families, like Brett Favre, all of a sudden he played for 2 more teams.
Exactly. Well, look at Andy Pettit. He retired to spend more time with his family. He came back less than a year later. So
you go to spend more time with your family and your home, and your wife's like, Andy, that garbage isn't going to take out itself. But you're like, oh, what did I do? I should be on a pitcher's mound right now.
You think about it. You're 40 years old. You're sitting around the house all day. Unless you get into broadcasting or something, what are you going to do with yourself all day? You're essentially in semi-prime of your life. Sitting around the house watching soap operas or The View has got to get a little tedious after a while, I would think. You can only play so much golf.
So this is why we need a sports czar, Jenny. This is reason number 232. I want to see how long Mariano Rivera can pitch well, right? He's my age. He's 43. There's literally no signs of drop-off at all. He's having the same season in 2013 that he had in 2011 and 2002. The stats are the same.
It's not like he was, it's not like he's Nolan Ryan where you're relying on throwing 95 plus. It's not like you wouldn't think that his body is really breaking down, the ability to throw the cutter. It doesn't involve being young or super muscular or anything, You wouldn't think he was really down that much. He could go for another 10 years, theoretically, 7 years, especially 50.
He's just got that crazy pitch that's clearly not getting any worse at all. And it has the same effect on the batters that it's been having since he came into the league. and he should just keep pitching. I can't believe I'm arguing for a Yankee to continue to pitch.
I know.
Do you see A-Rod in a Yankee uniform ever again?
Well, I think that they're like, I mean, it's funny because Jeter, they were supposed to have like this full-blown program and they were going to follow it to the letter, and there was a certain number of days, and then they completely crumpled that plan up and threw it out the window after Hafner and Gardner got hurt on the same night, and they rushed Jeter back. And with A-Rod, they're like, take your time, work your way through single A, and now he just moved up to triple A. And, you know, his injury, which seemingly, you know, was not as bad as Jeter's in terms of, you know, they want to protect Jeter, and they're telling A-Rod, like, take your time. So I think they're hoping that Selig will step in with whatever his investigation is of the Florida clinic and whatever, and do what they don't, you know, do them a favor by suspending him for the year. But they certainly don't seem to be rushing him back. But so I think they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that he is not in a Yankees uniform again.
If you're the Yankees, how much money are they saving? Like $30 million. If he gets suspended, they save like $30 million, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, the insurance, I think, has already paid the first half of it because he's been hurt. And I think what they were hoping was that some doctor would say, oh, he's physically unable to play. And then they could get insurance to eat the whole salary for the year. But, and then if he's suspended, you know, they don't have to pay him. And I think they would try desperately somehow legally to void his contract under some, you know, morals clause or something. You can't, the Major League Baseball union made it so you can't wipe away his contract for PED use. Good work by Don Fear, the boys on that one. But they would try any legal means they can, even if they could save, like, you know, even if they only had to pay 60 cents on the dollar, they'd be happy. Negotiate.
It's amazing. He's the fifth leading home run hitter of all time.
Yeah.
Anyway, two of the top five, Bonds and A-Rod. History will just not take them seriously.
And Sosa's up there too, I think, right?
Well, he's up there for the single seasons.
I thought he was up there in like. I must be confusing him. I was thinking he was up in like top five too, but no.
Hold on, I can look that up. He's number 8. You're right, 609.
Okay.
Only 8 guys have 600.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's 3 out of that top 8.
About 6 of them should have huge asterisks next to them.
Then Rafi Palmeiro's 12. Manny's at 14, but Manny didn't cheat until he left the Red Sox.
Oh, clearly, absolutely right. The Red Sox don't cotton to that kind of thing.
When Manny moved to LA, his life fell apart, and it's really sad as Red Sox fans who knew him when he was clean that whole time to see what he turned into.
You hate to see such a clean Boy Scout-like player turn into a bad apple in another town. It happens.
Well, if you remember, Johnny, he goes to LA, stats take off immediately. Didn't happen for us. Listen, I love what Manny did, and it was a pleasure watching a clean home run hitter in Boston. I don't know what happened to him after he left. A lot of people lose their mind when they leave Boston, Johnny.
It's true. It really goes downhill.
All right, the Chris Davis 38 homers by the All-Star break thing. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, nowadays, I would like to say that it's clean, but I mean, we can never assume anybody's clean anymore, right? I mean, with HGH and everything else and all the stuff they don't test for, I mean, we're all cynical now and have to look at everything with a jaundiced eye because we were fooled before, you know, and with the Ryan Braun thing, and he swore up and down that the samples were wrong and yada yada, and now he's mixed up in this thing in Florida with A-Rod. So, you know, you just can't believe anything anymore. I'd like to believe that it's all clean and pure and wonderful, but you know, until they test them and it's proven, and I don't even know how you prove it anymore, frankly, because I'm not sure we believe tests or whatever, you know.
I think the greatest move he could have done is at the home run derby. He comes out and just pees right in a cup on national TV. He just fills it and hands it to somebody and says, "I'm clean. Here it is."
Yeah,
I really think he would have been a hero. I think people would have gone nuts for that.
Gone urine and blood just to be, you know, fully forthcoming.
And semen. I would throw semen in. Just the whole thing. Whole kit and caboodle. Here are all my body fluids. Test all of them.
Take everything my body can produce and test it.
Everything.
There you go.
I am 100% clean. I don't want the stigma of anyone thinking of doing. But and it's sad that, you know, we have to talk about this. And I know this has been a radio show, and First Take and all those shows have been talking about this point. But, you know, unfortunately, this is what happened. The years and years of negligence with the sport.
Right.
And I think it's legit. Jonah Keri and I just talked about it. I think he could end up at 49 homers. I think he just had a really great 3 months, and he was healthy, and he was hitting the crap out of the ball, and he was on a good streak. I wouldn't be shocked if Miguel Cabrera passed him for the home run title. I don't think it's fluky. It's not like when like when Luis Gonzalez was hitting homers in the 50s and stuff, and it just made no sense.
He's been a good player for
he was like a double hitter.
So it's not like he came out of nowhere.
Yeah. So give us your long-term prognosis on the Yanks here.
I don't know. I mean, their pitching and defense has been pretty good. Their pitching has been very good, actually, but their offense is just, it's non-existent. I mean, that's why they had to rush Jeter back, because they just have no offense whatsoever. And they've been, murdered by injuries, and they've been murdered by guys getting old. And, I got fooled. Everybody got fooled in April when Travis Hafner and Vernon Wells seemed to have the Wayback Machine working, and that fell apart in May. And they've just been, they've been super streaky. They go on these 5-game losing streaks, and they get shut out by the Royals, and they can't score any runs, and they just look pathetic and get like 3 hits. So, and they're worried about the luxury tax next year, so they're not spending money. So it's not like they're going to go out and get somebody, and they need so much help in so many areas. I'm not even sure they could go out and make a splash in the trade at the trade deadline and get all the things they need. So, I mean, who knows? The AL East is a logjam basically among 4 teams. I know the Sox are doing it with smoke and mirrors somehow, which amazes me. They never seem to lose, but the Yanks are only 6 back, 5 in the loss column, and you never know what can happen in the second half. Guys get hot. Jeter comes back and does some things. Who knows? But I don't want a lot of hope, frankly.
The one good thing is I was right. Kevin Youkilis had a monster year. I told you that was going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. He's had a monster year in the whirlpool and the spa. Yeah.
I guess the 2 silver linings for you this Yankee season. Silver lining number 1, no A-Rod whatsoever.
Yeah, and then exactly.
Silver lining 2, your least favorite Yankee, who you begrudgingly put up with when he helped you win the World Series that year, Mark Teixeira. You didn't have to really see him either.
I mean, that turns out to be just a god-awful contract. I mean, somebody called the fan a couple weeks ago to say what a good guy Teixeira was, and you could always pencil him in for 30 and 100. He hits like 240, 250. And he's out he was hurt last year. He's out all of this year. He has not been what he was for other teams with that contract. The Yankees get, everybody murders the Yankees. Oh, they go out and buy players. When they go out and buy players and they end up being awful. They went out and bought Giambi. He was terrible. They got Teixeira. He hasn't been what he was before that contract. Randy Johnson. You can go down the line. Like, they make these splashes with free agents. They haven't had a good free agent signing since Reggie Jackson. It's ridiculous. Sabathia has been good. I'll give them that. But
Sabathia was a good one.
I know that was a strong statement, Reggie Jackson. But
you were mad. Nobody's holding against
players, and they just wilt in the Bronx, or something happens. And Teixeira's a good guy. He seems affable enough, and good clubhouse guy and all that. But just not worth the $180 million. And I remember crowing about it at the time because they'd outbid the Red Sox. What's his name? Tony Maserati still on the radio saying how the Red Sox have gone downhill because they couldn't sign Teixeira, but he has not been worth that contract at all.
Well, he was the number 2 MVP in 2009, and then followed that up with the phenomenal playoffs.
Yeah, he was good in the playoffs that year, but he's all too.
No, he wasn't good. He was. Remember, he was. He 167.
Oh, he was
222
and
136. Yeah. Remember, he was 136 in the World Series.
That's right. He was terrible. They won in spite of him.
Yeah, you were thinking. I think 2011 he was good in the playoffs.
When he was the only
2012.
guy
Sorry.
He was the only guy that hit that year. But
so would you do that contract again if I told you he's going to have an awesome regular season that will lead to 1 World Series title, which he would then disappear in the playoffs. But then from that point on, it's $20 million a year, slowly going down the tubes by year 5.
Not worth $180 million. I think it's a $180 million contract. So no, I wouldn't do it over again. And he's a good defensive first baseman, but I mean, that's not worth a lot of money to me.
Good dad, an inspiration to you as a father.
He totally is that. It's true. He's good with the kids, and he's able to spend a lot of time with them this year. So I'm sure they're happy about that.
Yeah, he's another one who's ready to
play. His daddy's wrist hurts.
What's the meanest thing you could say about the Red Sox right now?
Well, I would probably make some PED allegations or something with Lackey and Big Papi, but that was improvement and rank speculation on my part. So, John Lackey, the guy's been like the worst pitcher in baseball statistically for the past 3 years. Comes back from Tommy John throwing harder than he has in 10 years. No flags are raised there.
He's in great shape, Johnny.
Yeah, he did lose some weight. That's true. He lost some weight, which probably should take some speed off your fastball if it does anything, and somehow it's increased his. So, and Big Papi just, off the scrap heap from the Twins, cut loose. Now he has the most hits ever by a DH. Nothing controversial about that at all.
Physical marvel. Twins didn't know what they had.
And he's still trying to hunt down those PEDs that somehow got, or whatever it was, that crazy substance in his muscle milk or whatever that caused him to be on that list. Still trying to track down the real killers on that one.
Could have been Adderall. We don't know what substance it was.
We don't. Could have been anything. It's true.
Could have been anything. Could have been semi-amphetamine and Sudafed that he took.
If you told me that John Lester was going to be pretty mediocre, Buck Holtz was going to be out for a lengthy period of time, and Lackey was going to have to be the Red Sox best pitcher before the season started, I would have taken that in a heartbeat and said, my God, they'll be 20 games under 500. Instead, they're 20 over. And so I have no idea how they're doing it, but they're doing it. So it's ridiculous and outrageous.
I have to go because I have to do a radio hit on Dan Le Batard's show. I'm going to call you next week for the podcast after I watch Sharknado 2.
Yes, please. No, this is Sharknado 1.
Sharknado 1. I'm sorry.
I have extensive thoughts on Sharknado, so please.
My first Sharknado viewing. Yes, we'll call you next week. Johnny, enjoy the vacation with the family.
Thanks, buddy.
I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you. Bye-bye.
Right now, let's talk about our friends at Stamps.com. Listen. If you go to Stamps.com, you never have to go to the post office again. All you have to do is just stay home. Just go to the website. You can put in our promo code BS, get this special offer on the right side of the website, put in a little BS, type it in. You get a no-risk trial, $110 bonus offer, includes a digital scale up to $55 of free postage. You see the little microphone at the top. That's what you put it in. Just give it a whirl. You don't have to go to the post office anymore. Listen, I hate the post office. I've talked about this in the podcast many times. I would much rather be home on Stamps.com printing out my own postage. So that's what you should do. Stamps.com, our partner. Give it a whirl.
Target % off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.